So what year did you graduate Harvard? It's the only time I want to talk years.
99.
99.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some time between graduation and your first kind of like getting in the room.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I sold my comic book collection, moved to LA to pursue something. I didn't really quite know what yet. And my first job was an assistant at Paramount, and then I was an assistant at a record label.
How'd you get that assistant's job?
Man, I went in there. They had somehow a friend of mine worked at a talent agency, and he was like, you know, they're interviewing for an assistant in the television department at Paramount TV. And I went in there and luckily met with an executive who, you know, despite me being fresh off the train, so to speak, in wingtip shoes, you know, like they were like, hey, you know, he seems like he's decently smart. And I got it by following up. So every now and then, if you get a good interview, just follow up. Sometimes that follow up makes you seem like you're detail oriented, even if you're not. But being detail oriented will always help you, whether it's in the boardroom or in your artwork. You know, the ability to sort of see there's something wrong with this shot and be able to figure out before anybody else, this is how we can fix it, will do you an invaluable amount of good on any set, whether you're the director or not.
I think it's important for you guys as you're starting your journey, you're getting your degrees and you're doing your student projects and all these different things to kind of create your calling card. I do think it's important to understand life post-graduation as you're pursuing your dream and the different things and hurdles that could present themselves. So I'm curious, like, what were some of the jobs that you had beyond Paramount assistant? Like, tell me some of the gigs you had to kind of take on in your pursuit.
Well, they don't pay you much as an assistant. That's, you know, that's first thing. So you might have to take a second job. My second job was in the mall. You know, I got a job at Banana Republic. So, you know, and it was good because I could buy, like, with my employee discount, I could buy, you know, respectable clothes to be an assistant, you know, at whatever it was, 50% off. So, you know, and that was like my original, like, you know, sort of like crew of people. We all worked at Banana Republic. But
are you thinking about writing at this point?
No, you know, writing came along. So, you know, I'm an assistant at Paramount, and then I'm an assistant at a record label. I'm still trying to find out what I'm going to do in life. And I think it's okay. I think some of you are probably in your 20s. It's okay to use your 20s to figure out what you're going to do with your life. You know, you might try something and be like, ooh, this isn't working. And then just get out of that. I mean, I think it's okay. It's called the quarter life crisis. I definitely suffered from one of those. But my mom, rest her soul, she saw me and Bashir eating. She was feeding us, you know, we would go over her apartment. By this point, Dad had passed. We went over to her apartment. She was feeding us dinner. We had her cracking up. And she was like, you guys should start writing this stuff down. You guys are funnier than so many of the people on TV. Just, why don't you guys write this down? And I always joke that, like, you know, being African-American, I come from an oral tradition. You know, like the idea of writing it down was like, I was like, you can get paid to be funny? Like, that's ridiculous. You know, but we started writing the stuff down and it was immediately sort of a hit. And I think you guys appreciate this. So, you know, it's the mid-2000s at this point. YouTube is just getting started. We're like, we're going to post this stuff on YouTube. Trust me, it's going to become relevant to what I have to wrap it around to. And I was like, oh, let's form a sketch group and then we'll post that stuff on YouTube. So we held auditions, being nobodies, not knowing anybody in Hollywood. We held auditions for our sketch group. And because we were sometimes funny on stage, some really good actors and actresses came out to those auditions. And so our very first foray into entertainment, 2006.
Is this the message?
This is about to be the message. But it started off as Cleo's Apartment, which is the random title of a Marvin Gaye song. But we thought that was cool. We were like, oh, that's a deep cut. Our first group was me and Bashir, Wyatt Cenac, Robin Thede, Nika King from Euphoria. She plays Zendaya's mom. And Nefertari Spencer, who's on Southside, which is one of our shows, and Sherman Showcase, which is another one of our shows. I say all that to say, at the time we formed that group, nobody had done anything. Wyatt was the famous one. It was because he had written on one season of King of the Hill. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember, I can still see Robin Thede's audition, and it was just like, you know, because we're about the same age, and it was just like, oh, she's got it. You know, she's super funny. She can do voices, and she can do characters. And I think that that's what's so important. When I have people reach out to me now, and they're like, how do I get into this business? I'm like, guess what? Congratulations, you're in it. You know, just the fact that you are trying to do it means that you're in it. And all you have to do next is you have to find some people, preferably at your own level, you know, and since you guys are all generally young, you can kind of find them everywhere. They're in your classes and they're when you join like, an improv theater, they're there too. Just get people on your own level, and then all of you guys just build each other up and just work together and shoot things and post them online. I mean, when we posted on YouTube, people at lunch are going to find this funny. We actually had a piece go viral. It got like, I know, ironic, right? It got like 2 million views back when that was a lot. So we were on CNN talking about that piece. And it was just because we shot something that we had written an original song for, that we cast with our really funny friends, and something happened. Nowadays, that's a lot harder to do in that sphere. But I know for a fact, we took a meeting just a couple of weeks ago with some guys who had been posting some videos on Instagram, and they're not getting like millions and millions of views, but they're getting enough views that somebody told us about them, and then we sat down with them, and guess what? Now we're going to try and build a TV show with them because we have a deal with Warner Brothers. I say all that just to say, just start doing it with your friends. You don't have to be anybody famous. Nobody has to open a door. If somebody does that, nice, but you don't have to have that. All that time that you shoot with your friends, you're learning the craft, and that's the important thing.
And to that point, in respecting the process of creating the sketch comp Cleo's Apartment, which became The Message, which ultimately aired on HBO and AOL, coming out of that, I'm assuming that's when Chocolate News started coming about and Comedy Central and joining the writing staff. Did that sketch experience and writing into all that, was that 100%? Your calling card?
It made us producers and writers. So we originally came to this as writers. We wrote something that we had auditions for it, but nobody seemed to really get it. So then we threw ourselves into it. So now we're writers and actors. We got a little bit of money from HBO Online, is what they used to call it, and AOL back in the day. This was around 2008. And we took that little bit of money. It was like $1,000 a week, which to us at that time might as well have been $1 million a week. Like we were like, someone else is going to pay for these wigs? This is amazing. And so then we got that money, and then we started, shooting some stuff. Like I said, one of them went viral. CAA called us up. William Morris called us up. We eventually signed with Bernie Brillstein and some other people. And then
Bernie Brillstein, by the way, was like
he was the man.
Every comic you've ever heard of.
Everybody from Jim Belushi to Jim Henson. And through him, he was like, and so and I always say, don't get an agent too soon. Get an agent once you're already creating stuff on your own, and then they'll be able to help you way more than if you think, oh, if I get an agent, they're going to give me my big break. No, you can make yourself your big break. Get them once you're breaking. And then he put us in front of David Allen Greer, who we used to love from, we were big fans of his work on In Living Color. Again, probably before everybody in here's time, but if you can go online and watch some old episodes of In Living Color, just know that at the time, that was a very avant-garde show. They were doing hip-hop long before Saturday Night Live really knew what hip-hop even was. David Allen Greer had a show on Comedy Central. That was our first TV credit, but we were there for about a month before we got a call saying that Jimmy Fallon was going to take over.
My next question.
For Jay Leno.
Slow down.
All right. I'm trying to get through this stuff.
Chocolate News.
It was an interesting show. We were on there with some people who had been writers on In Living Color 10 years earlier. Actually, about 15 years earlier. And, we had that cockiness that you can only have when you're like in your 20s and there are people in the room who are in their 30s and 40s. You're like, old man. Nobody wants to hear you. And they were pitching jokes that just felt old and stale. And so we came in there with our jokes. And even though we pitched a lot of funny stuff, we never got one joke on the show. We were the baby writers who never. So whenever people were like, oh, I love Chocolate News, I'm always like, we didn't get no jokes on the show, though. And if people were like, I hate Chocolate News, it's like, hey, we didn't get any jokes on the show. So, either way it went. But it was our first writer credit.
And now that was the perfect segue into Fallon.
Yeah.
And you did get some great sketches on the show.
So at Fallon, we were part of a big group of young writers. Jimmy wanted all young writers. Not trying to be an ageist, but he did not want the generation that had done Conan. He didn't want to do a show like Conan. He's like, I want to do a show that's absolutely right now. So he hired a lot of first-time writers, and we were not first-time, but we were literally I was one of 5 writers on the show, which means that, like on the very first show, I wrote Slow Jam the News, which I wrote for a couple of years with my writing partner, Bashir. When Obama came on to Slow Jam the News, that was some stuff that we had written. We did History of Rap with Justin Timberlake. Jimmy's thing was always like, I want to bring like spectacle. I want people to like be talking about it and sharing, the clip on YouTube, even if they aren't watching the show live. And we helped build that show. And he's always given us credit as somebody who, me and Bashir, we were like people who helped define what that show was going to be.
And what's the process like writing for Timberlake and these celebrities when they
Everybody's different. Some people were mad cool, Timberlake was generally pretty cool. Some people just came in wanting to do anything. I remember Ludacris was really cool. Surprisingly, Gwyneth Paltrow was really cool.
How does it work? Like they're cool.
I mean, okay, so you come in at 9 o'clock.
What's the process?
You come in at 9 o'clock. If you work on a late night show, here's the process in case you luck out and get one of those jobs. You come in at 9 o'clock. You sit down with the host. Nowadays, I hear a lot of the hosts don't sit down with the writer's room. You have to pitch the head writer. But when I was there, Jimmy would sit there. We pitch 3 ideas apiece for what the bit in the show was going to be that night. By 10:30, he made a selection of what was going into the show. By noon, you had to have the script. Probably 12:30 if you got an extension. By 1 o'clock, you were sitting down with production. And that's what made us producers, because nowadays, especially if you start shooting your own stuff, you're going to need somebody to be essentially a producer to figure out how to, where are we going to shoot and what are going to be the hours of that shoot and do we have enough for wigs and costumes in this one? And, all that sort of stuff we were able to figure out when we were shooting stuff online, and then even more so when we were found. The nice thing about working on a real show is that you actually have a budget. You can throw like real songs in there because there's like a whole department of lawyers who just clear the song. By 3 o'clock, you're rehearsing. By 4:30, they bring in the audience. By 5, you're filming. And by about 8 o'clock, you go home, and then the next day you come in and you do it all over again. We were there for 4 years. It is a grind.